Hello everyone and welcome to part 10 of this series of life on the railway. Obviously watch parts 1 to 9 if you haven't done already, and thank you for watching. Remember to like, share and subscribe too. So on with the story. This time we're going to be looking at servants of the industry. Luxury trains and dashing expresses represent the romantic image of railway life. But railways were first built to serve industries. The earliest lines, serving mines and quarries, often ran on steep winding tracks from mine to river or port, running downhill fully loaded, sometimes a horse riding in its own special truck ready to haul the empties back uphill. Nay. One of those connected the Welsh slate mines and quarries to Blaen or Festiniog to the harbour of Porthmadog. In 1862, the company's engineer Charles Spooner decided that time had arrived to start using locomotives, but there was a problem to be faced. Instead of being the standard gauge of 4 foot 18 inches, the rails were only 23.5 inches apart. The little engines devised for the track were the first to be used on a narrow gauge railway, but the line soon became popular with passengers who appreciated the drama of a journey through the mountains of Snowdonia. More power was needed, but how did you get more power when the line was so narrow and twisty? The answer was the double fairley, the push me pull you of the railway world, designed by Robert Francis Fairley. Hope I pronounced that fairly correctly. With a cab in the middle, it looked like two engines that had been joined together back to back. But the secret of its success was that the two boilers were independently mounted, so that on a sharp bend, one set of wheels might point one way and the other set the opposite direction. Narrow gauge railways proved popular as the servants of many industries. For the crew, they often represented a very different experience from working on any other sort of line. On the Festiniog line, for example, the ascent is steep, so the little engines have to work hard and the firemen scarcely have time to rest. But fear not, because going down, life becomes altogether easier on the footplate as the engine acts as a brake rather than as motive power. There may not be much variety when going up and down the same length of track all day every day, but there is a compensation in the magnificent scenery. The Festiniog line has always been a great favourite for steam devotees. Perhaps the most famous of all express drivers from the age of steam was Bill Hoole. On his death in 1979, he chose to be buried in a cemetery close to Festiniog tracks. His gravestone reads Bill Hoole, engineman extraordinary. When their working days ended, many of these small lines found new life carrying tourists and steam enthusiasts. By no means were all industrial lines narrow gauge. Many large companies had their own internal railway system. With their own locomotives and rolling stock, the brewing industry of Burton-on-Trent in Staffordshire became hugely dependent on the rail network. At the peak of production in the 1880s, it was sending out 3 million barrels of beer a year. Yeah, that rhymes, doesn't it? The biggest of these Burton breweries was Bass, whose trade was so important to the Midland Railway that when they came to build their London terminus at St Pancras, the undercroft was built with the supports set apart so that 3 barrels would sit exactly between them. The brewery also had its own private railway system with 16 miles of track, the longest of its kind in the country. They had 10 locomotives hustling backwards and forwards, taking out full barrels and returning empties, and transporting raw material, alcoholics. Interesting fact to end the video: many years ago it was possible to pay for a ride on one of the trucks of the Slate Railway at Talwyn in rural Wales. I hope I pronounced that right. This was opened in 1866 and you could go and enjoy a picnic at the top of the mountain. You could keep the truck with you and, when it was time to go home, jump in, release the brake and roll back down the hill and hope you stop when you get to the bottom. Modern health and safety rules clearly did not apply in those days. Today, visitors of the Tailwind Railway can enjoy a ride on the historic line that runs for 7¼ miles through the Farthew Valley. Hope I pronounced that right. And that is the end of the video. Sorry about my terrible Welsh. They're all hard to pronounce at them places. Why do you make them so hard? I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a like, share and subscribe. And until the next part, take care of yourselves and TTFN.